All right, welcome everybody to our February program. We're still trying to settle down here at the Chico Creek Nature Center, but I hope most of you are settled in at home. So this is a hybrid program. We do Zoom and in person. Our first speaker, Geiser, will be doing Zoom from his home. And our next speaker, Halfpenny, is in person here. So luckily we can do this and really reach out to a lot of people. And tonight's weather was a little iffy. We were just going, I wonder if we'll be able to even get into the nature center, but it did clear up. It's beautiful outside, the frogs are singing, and we're going to have a great evening tonight. Thank you for coming, and people that are Zoom, thank you. So what we do is first give you a bit of an update of what AltaCal is doing, an update on the upcoming field trips or events. We ask you if you have any exciting sightings, mostly bird related, but it can be other sightings like a UFO or a shooting star or something. Anyway. So right now, we just got, this is post-Snow Goose Festival. It was very successful again. It's pretty much well-run, well-attended festival, and we just enjoy it every year to actually introduce people to the incredible wildlife, waterfall, and wildlife we have in our state. So we're very lucky to have this continue. This was our 24th year. And we've reached out to thousands of kids. That's my passion, to reach the kids first. And so we'd love to have that youth programs, nature activities. Because you know what, when I was a youth, that's what got me excited about nature and birds. I was introduced to that when I was very young. So right now, the next few months are packed full of field trips. And again, that's where it's pretty exciting as an adult, but I suggest also bring a young person along with you to join these field trips. And so our field trip coordinator is here, Karen, and she'll talk to you about what's upcoming.
Right. Hello, everybody. Okay, field trips. We've had quite a few in February this month. We've got one left, and that's the Chico Oxidation Ponds, which will be next Saturday. Sad news is it's closed because we have enough participants, but if you want to go, I'd say get on the waiting list because you never know, people cancel, and it's possible that you could still go to that one. On March 2nd, we have the first Saturday at Pine Creek Access. So this is a field trip that every first Saturday, we're either going to go to Pine Creek Access or we'll go to another local site here in Chico. And on March 8th, Liz Webster and I will be leading the Urbana Fields field trip for beginners. So if any of you are beginning birders, that's going to be a really good trip to go on. Slacker Saturday is on March 16th, and Skip Auger leads those field trips. He calls them slacker because he likes to start at 10 o'clock rather than, 8 o'clock like the rest of us. And then we have several other field trips in March. And so I would suggest, they're listed in our newsletter, they're listed on the website under our calendar, and also the newsletter is on the website. So we post the field trips on Facebook. So there's lots of places you can find the field trip information. So come on out and join us. We have a lot of fun.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, a couple of things we like to ask the Zoom people is to please mute yourself. And if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat room. We will visit those after each speaker. And because we have two speakers tonight, we're going to get going. But quickly, if you have any sightings that you want to share, Zoom people can put that in the chat room. We'll revisit those at the end. But if there's anyone in the audience want to share anything they've seen out in the wild. Yes, Karen.
In my backyard, I have a lark sparrow.
A lark sparrow, beautiful
Never
sparrow.
happened. It came to the feeder. It was only there one day.
Okay, her lark sparrow came to the feeder, and that's very unusual.
Yeah,
So the
right.
weather is probably pushing them to like scramble and try to find food where they can. Yeah. Any other sightings? I know I've been out in the back roads watching and looking for bald eagles, and I've seen lots of them out there. So that's what's great. Anything else? Okay. Well, tonight, folks, we're going to have Jared Geiser give us an update and some facts about the Valley's Edge. And I'm sure most of you have heard about it. So I'm going to hand it over to Jared. And we welcome your questions. Just wait until after his presentation, and we'll go from there. So thank you, Jared.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Can you all see my slides right now? Should say Valley's Edge specific plan. Yeah, Suzette's nodding. Awesome. Yeah, I wish I could be there in person today, but unfortunately I've come down with some sickness. I've been coughing a whole bunch, and I wanted to protect everyone, so I'm staying home, zooming in, and I'm excited to talk about the Valley's Edge update and what's going on. So briefly, I would just like to say what Valley's Edge is really quick. So it is a approximately 1,500 acre development plan for the foothills above Chico. And so it's a prime example of suburban sprawl with sparse housing, stretching up the ridge line from Stilson Canyon to Honey Run Road, basically filling in all the land between Butte Creek and Little Chico Creek. All right. And so this development was going through the approval process, but there were some roadblocks for the developer. There was serious controversy over it, significant public outcry during the environmental analysis portion of the project's approval process, and continued public resistance to the development. And so as a result of the community being organized and standing up against this development, a political referendum was done. And that political referendum ultimately gathered enough signatures to put the issue on the ballot in the March primary. So Valley's Edge will be decided upon by the Chico voters. Measures O and P will be voted on March 5th or at any time. So really quick, I thought I'd go into some details about the projects and why this relates to AltaCal as an organization that's committed to protecting birds and their habitats. So this is the general land use plan for the development, what they're planning on doing. We can see to the western edge of the site on the right, it's the vast majority of it is going to be very low density single family homes, large homes, on bigger lots. And then towards the bottom left hand side, or the southwest, I misspoke, along the Steve Harrison Memorial Bike Path, there is a little bit of commercial going on, and then there are some preserves. And so yeah, this really is in the foothills. You can see on the map on the left the topography. It is very, very steep here, and about half of the housing units are planned to be senior only housing. And so this went through environmental review, and despite their best efforts to mitigate the impacts in writing, if not in reality, there were still 2 environmental impacts that could not be mitigated, even with creative mitigations. And so that's climate change and aesthetics. And so we're going to get into that a little bit. And so the project will have significant and unavoidable impacts on greenhouse gas emissions. So this would then obstruct the Chico's climate action plan, which has a goal of reducing carbon emissions to protect the safety and well-being of our community, as well as the earth that we are all dependent upon. And so I have these little graphics from the United Nations at the bottom, just kind of showing the difference and the importance of taking action now to mitigate climate change, because, some people might think we're doomed or climate change is such a big issue, but the degree to which we reduce carbon emissions directly correlates to the degree at which we'll be facing impact. So the degree of the impacts would be more intense if we get to the 3 degrees of warming. And so we want to minimize the global warming for us and for the birds. And so for those of you who have not heard, the National Audubon Society came out with a report titled 389 Species on the Brink. And the report was scathing, and it shows how 2/3 of North American birds are at risk of extinction from climate change. And so this really is an issue for humans. This really is an issue for birds and for all the ecosystems of the. All right, so habitat loss. This is the big concern here. Before I get into what Valley's Edge would do to bird habitat, I just want to kind of give us all some context as to where we are in 2024, or as this chart shows, 2017. We're really at a time where we've seen birds disappear at an alarming rate. They estimate, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, through their scientific research, that almost 3 billion birds have quite literally disappeared just in the past 50 years. So the scale of habitat loss and degradation is quite out of line. And we really need to rein that in and protect the habitat that remains, because habitat loss and degradation is the biggest threat to birds. And so their habitat needs to be protected and enhanced. So let's look at the habitat on the Valley's Edge site. As you can see here in this kind of turquoise-ish green, that's grasslands. Over 900 acres of the site consist of grasslands. And then you can see this yellow area. The yellow area is blue oak foothill pine woodlands. So think of kind of maybe oak savanna, maybe denser blue oak scattered in certain areas, as well as some foothill pines mixed into this kind of savanna woodland environment. And then in purple, we see that there is valley oak riparian. So along Comanche Creek there, I believe there is some valley oak woodland as well. And the two major habitats that will be impacted by the development are the grasslands and the oak woodlands, but the development will be negatively impacting wetlands as well. All right, so just how much are we talking? So this table here kind of just reiterates the acreage we looked at on the last one. And this page on the right shows 569 acres of grasslands are proposed to be developed on from Valley's Edge, 200 acres of oak woodlands. And so what does this mean for birds? And we'll get into this a little bit more, but we can just look at this table on the bottom of some of the impacts to species. So burrowing owl nesting and foraging habitat, burrowing owls would lose 570 acres of that from the development. Pallid bat tree roosting habitat, 213 acres lost. Other bat tree roosting habitat, same acreage. And the Butte County meadowfoam would be losing habitat as well. So let's really get into it. So 200 acres of oak woodland, that's a lot of oak woodlands, especially with the statistic in mind that we've already lost 95% of California's oak woodlands. And so the birds that depend upon these really biodiverse ecosystems are already in peril and quite frankly need their habitat. And so here we can see some massive oaks serving as habitat. You know, you guys are all probably well aware that oaks support a myriad of wildlife species. UC Davis scientists estimate over 250 different species of life, of living beings are interacting with this oak. And so all these little grubs, all these little insects are all food for the birds. And the acorns themselves are major food source for wildlife and has historically been a major food source for humans as well. All right, so what birds are we actually talking about? We're talking about the yellow-billed magpie, Lewis's woodpecker, we can see in the corner here eating a little acorn, loggerhead shrike, evening grosbeak, and the oak titmouse. And it's not just important to protect these birds' habitat because we love these birds, but it's also important to protect them because these species are already facing pretty significant declines. Most of them, all 5 of these bird species have declined by over 50% since the 1970s. In the case of the Lewis's woodpecker and the yellow-billed magpie, we've seen a 76% decline in their population in California in the past 50 years. Mm-hmm. So yeah, pretty significant. And then we look at the grassland habitat. So 569 acres of the 900 or so total would be directly lost to development. Here's a photo from Karen Laszlo of a northern harrier flying over a grassland with the historic rock wall in the photo too. So yeah, the site is located, I kind of showed you some maps earlier, but the site is located on the southeastern edge of Chico in the foothills. And so it's really wide and open because grasslands make up the majority of the site, but also those oaks. And so back to the grasslands. We'd be seeing loss of habitat for these bird species as well. The burrowing owl, the white-tailed kite, AltaCal's very own mascot, the Swainson's hawk, the northern harrier, the horned lark, and the brewer's blackbird. So, yep, I don't need to remind everyone that these birds are already facing declines, significant declines. And then to the wetland habitat. So this site actually does not contain a significant amount of wetland. When you look at the whole site, it's only about 6 acres or so of wetland habitat, about 6 acres. And so about 1.25 acre would be directly developed. And if you can read my public comment in the environmental impact report, that hydrologic disruption would be occurring as well for the wetlands that might not be directly developed, but are downslope from development by the addition of impervious surfaces, such as homes and roads and all that infrastructure on top of these different groundwater seepage areas or springs. By developing on these springs and seepage areas, we would be altering the hydrology of the site and altering the flow of water to these wetlands. And so when you look at all the maps showing habitat and all that, they just lump wetlands into grassland. All right, so what are our other options? Because you might be hearing a lot of people say, we need Valley's Edge, we need housing. And while there is a housing shortage, there is no shortage of places to develop housing. And so in purple here, you can see all these different opportunity sites. In orange, you see these different special planning areas. And so the opportunity sites are quite exciting from my point of view. There are 15 of them identified in the general plan. And many of them have been designated for mixed use, higher density residential development, or other uses compatible with the existing areas. And so we can look at these purple sites. There's one on Park Avenue, one on 20th Street, one on Mangrove, one on West East Avenue, North Esplanade. These are substantial. These sites have substantial opportunity for housing development and housing development of a wide range of income levels as well. They could develop housing that would meet the needs of lower income residents, moderate income residents, as well as higher income residents. Whereas, unfortunately, Valley's Edge, the vast majority of it would be targeted towards those residents with above moderate income levels, as less than 1% of all the land for residential development is required to be affordable. So, vast majority of it is going to be housing for people of above moderate income. All right, so I encourage everyone to dive deeper into this because I couldn't dive very deep in this short little time. So go to AltaCal's website under our conservation tab. You can click Valley's Edge. We have some good information on there. You can download the habitat loss factual summary I created last winter. And you can watch this awesome video that Ryan filmed at the Women's Club just maybe the Friday before last, February 9th, where there was a panel of land use and planning and conservation experts speaking about the proposed development. So go to our website, a lot of good stuff there. I'm happy to answer any questions. You can reach out to me over email. Happy to talk with anyone and share information and share resources. Other websites, as I mentioned, altacal.org. You can do /VE-facts. Oh no, I lost my screen. Also, stopvalleysedge.org. If you go to their arguments tab, you can see a lot of good information about some of the issues they've identified. And I also encourage you to get information from the horse's mouth. So I would just Google, if you're interested in going to the city of Chico, getting information from them. City of Chico, Valley's Edge, you can Google that. That included this web link here that includes some information about the primary election, about the development as well. And yeah, I obtained most of my knowledge about this development from doing really thorough analysis of the environmental impact report a couple years ago and have been following this since, as I'm someone deeply concerned about the wildlife habitat and the shrinking of it. All right, happy to answer any questions. It looks like Joan has a question. Paulo Cedro successfully stopped the development of 166 homes slated for 716 acres. Look up shastapatrol.org. There's a presentation about wildlife that had a big impact. All right, I will take a look at that. Great. All right. Any other questions from people in the audience or people on Zoom?
I think we're fine here, Jared.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for the time to speak.
All right, Jared, thanks so much for your updating information. This helps a lot. And it's important to get out there and vote. So, anyway.
Yep, send in your ballots by March 5th.
So right now, we're going to take about a 5-minute break. We're going to have our next speaker on AltaCal's Certified Habitat Program. So this is the time to get up and stretch and get some refreshments, and we'll get back to you in about 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, folks, we are ready, and we sure appreciated Jared giving us this update on Valley's Edge. And you know what, this next program is quite important because we did hear about habitat destruction, and you know, we really see it. I mean, in our backyards, I just don't get as many birds as I did 10, 15 years ago. So I know I eventually been switching out, putting in more and more native plants. So it's made an improvement. So we are going to hear how all this works to create habitat for wildlife and birds through one of our great programs with AltaCal. So Deb Halfpenny, we'll talk about that.
So thank you all for coming out on this really rainy, blustery day. I'm really surprised to see as many of you here as are here. Yes, please, thank you. You know, if you can't hear me, I have a tendency to speak a little softly. When I grow up, I want to be Jared Geiser and learn how to talk like he does. I just like would love to do that. So I'm here to speak to you about the Neighborhood Habitat Certification Program. I recognize some people here who have certified gardens. Is there anybody else here who has a certified garden already? Anybody here know much about the program? A little bit. Good, good. Okay, that's wonderful. So to start out, let me see. I've got to figure out how to. You just just go ahead and do this.
Yeah, right arrow.
Okay. So we're really lucky. Jared had already spoken about a lot of things I was going to speak about, but he did it much more eloquently than I did. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why I think the program is extremely important, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the requirements that are necessary to be in the program, and then lastly, I'm going to speak to you about the thing I know most about, which is how do you make a habitat garden. So I'm going to try to go through the stuff that Jared already covered as quickly as I can. And if you can, because I think it might be a little long, you can hold your questions to the end. I appreciate that. Okay. So this is AltaCal. It's a bird program. So why am I showing you a picture of a monarch butterfly? Well, it's because I have my program set up to help the homeowner who probably doesn't know a lot about habitat loss and about how to make their garden habitat friendly. So a monarch is, you know, everybody knows what the monarch is. In Northern California, there's very few people who probably don't know what a monarch is, and there are very few people who do not understand the incredible decline in population that the monarchs are going through. This butterfly is particularly precious to me because I grew up in a place where they have an overwintering site. 2 years ago, 0 butterflies showed up to the overwintering site in Pacific Grove. Broke my heart. But this year, the Xerces Society has just set out their numbers from their Thanksgiving butterfly count. And the numbers that they came up with over all of the overwintering sites on the west coast of the United States was 233,000. Like, oh, that's a great lift, and it is, but that's only 5% of what used to be here in the 1980s. So this is the importance of habitat, having a habitat program, and having habitat in your yard. Okay, but the monarchs are not the only thing going through species decline. You can see, I do know of the birds, and Jared spoke about that much more eloquently than I can. And so birds, especially grassland birds, insects, mammals, and primates, except humans. So you think there might be a correlation? So I'm going to speak to you a little bit about insects, and then I'll tell you why. The insect apocalypse is a really important and problematic thing for birds in particular, and a lot of other species. The formatting changed. um, what is the reasons for this huge population in insects and birds? Well, the first of it is that our use of insecticides and herbicides. Another part of it, which Jared talked about so well, is the loss of habitat. And I was going to point out to you to make sure that you take note of that when you start to make your considerations about Valley's Edge. The loss of habitat, 50% of our land use on the planet is used for agriculture. The other loss of habitat comes from urban development, the introduction of invasive plants and animals, and light pollution, which we could talk about a little bit at a later time. Yeah, and another reason to talk about insects is because they are food. 96% of all bird species rely on insects to feed their young. Without insects, there are no birds. But but insects are also food for reptiles, amphibians, fish, mammals, other insectivorous insects, and even a few plants. At this point, people say, well, I don't want insects in my yard. I worked really hard to get rid of them. Like, do you want birds? Well, yeah, you can't have birds without the insects. They also pollinate. 12 to 15% of all of our food crops are pollinated by insects, and 80% of all plants, period. They're really, really important to have in our gardens and have on this planet. This is a picture, if you're familiar with this, this is a picture of a male carpenter bee, real popular here in Chico. And it's called a teddy bear bee. I just think it's adorable. But those are kind of bad statistics, and it can be a little overwhelming for a lot of people to hear that and go, oh, well, what can I do? Well, you can change the way you landscape. When you think about it, 78 to 80% of all the land in the United States is privately owned. We cannot rely on government agencies or parks or other things like that to create these habitat forests and not do anything on our own property. Everything we do in our property, affects the ecosystem around us. So what you do makes a big difference. So now these are the requirements for the program and the easiest things that you can do, even if you don't re-landscape or regarden your property. First, avoid using the use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers, period. Really watch it carefully. It makes a big difference. And this also includes organic fertilizers, not organic fertilizers, but organic pesticides as well. They all have an effect. And why chemical fertilizers? Because it makes it uninhabitable for all the microbes and insects and mycelia that live in the soil. Get rid of your lawn. Get rid of your lawn. When I moved to Chico 7 years ago. And I came from a place, well, I told you, from the Pacific Grove area, Monterey Peninsula. There is no water there. Nobody has a lawn. If you do, well, let me rephrase that. If you're rich enough to not care, you have a lawn. The water bills were phenomenal. I had clients who had water bills of $3,000 a month. So when I moved to Chico and I saw all these lawns, I was just appalled and flabbergasted. But you do have more water here, but not that much. So it's really important to get rid of as much lawn as you can. Besides the fact that it saves a lot of water, it has almost no habitat value. And I've had people say, well, yeah, but I see the robins are coming out and they're eating on the lawn and the rabbits come and they eat the lawn. That's really minor and superficial. It really has no habitat value for the insects and wildlife that live here. They require outside of water, most people use a lot of fertilizers and herbicides, and it takes a lot of time and maintenance, which create water and air pollution and noise pollution. So another thing is use as many native plants as you can. When I first took the program over this last year, Carla, who does the program with her, says, "Now don't be a native Nazi, because I come from the native plant world." Well, and I said, "Oh, okay. Yeah." Current research is showing, scientific research is showing, that you don't have to necessarily, do a full restoration job on the area around your living space. But to have a really good, balanced habitat in your yard, you should aim for 70% native plants. That, to some people, is pretty hard to do, especially if you have an existing, mature landscape. But aim towards that. The reason is that the native plants and the native insects and the other native wildlife, they depend on each other for their existence. They have a necessary and reciprocal relationship. One cannot live without the other. We need the insects to pollinate our plants, and the plants need the insects to reproduce as well. So this is, so here we have my monarch again, with its native habitat plant, the milkweed. Not all milkweeds are the best for monarchs. Using local natives is the best. And we can help you with that if you don't know what they are. This is another one that you should be probably more familiar with, because you see so many more of them around here. This is the pipevine swallowtail. Its only host plant is the Dutchman's pipe, Aristolochia californica. We have a couple out here in the native plant garden. It lays its eggs only on the pipevine. The caterpillars eat only the pipevine, leaves and fruit, and then they'll go off and they'll get nectar from other sources. They need that plant to reproduce. So when you're as far as plants, native plants for your garden, you say, well, I can only have a few. I have a very small space. What could I use? My suggestion is to make sure that you try to put in local keystone plants. And why are they called keystone plants? Because, like the picture of the stone arch up here, the keystone is the thing that holds that arch in place. Without that keystone, the arch just falls apart. Same thing in our native and habitat food programs and ecosystems. These are the plants that have the biggest impact for the biggest buck. You buy one oak tree, you are going to and put it in your yard. You will be creating habitat for 257 different species of wildlife that need that plant to survive. So here are the ones I took a list of top keystone plants for our area, and these are the local natives of those varieties. Do not worry about trying to figure this out. All this stuff is on our website online. I also have handouts over here that have the information. Oak is number one with 257 species. There's actually one or two other trees that have even more species. The more important, they host more species, and that's our local willow and sometimes cottonwood. The reason I don't have that on this list is because this is a garden-centered program. We really do not encourage people to plant willows, native willows, or cottonwood in their yard unless you have a lot of acreage and a running stream. They're extremely water needy, they're extremely aggressive with their roots, and you have those in your yard, you won't have much of anything else. So, everybody's place is going to be a little bit different. You have to make that call for yourself. But oaks, you can't go wrong with them here in our area. Another one we have, another requirement is try to remove invasive species from your garden area. There are a lot of lot of invasive plants around here. These two are my personal bugaboo this year. These are the ones I see in most people's gardens that I go and see. If you're familiar with them, this is Stipa tenuissima, the Mexican feathergrass, and this one, I can't remember the botanical one, is pokeweed. Okay, anybody in here like pokeweed? After I said it? There you go, thank you, Karen. I don't care. Yes, the birds love these plants. The birds take the plants, they love the berries in the end of summer, they'll fly up into the tree, poop them out, and then you've got pokeweed everywhere. It would be okay if it was just a, minor shrub, but it gets to be 12, 15 feet tall here in Chico. And it's not an annual, if you chop that down, the root stays, and after a year or two, you have got a root that's like this in the ground. And then you're out there with crowbars, and if you're trying to get that out, get it out as soon as you can. Okay, other things that are invasive in our area, in Chico in particular, privet, ivy, star thistle. Yeah, you probably can run through all kinds of blackberries in some people's yards. There are plenty of invasive things that just get them out. What they do is they steal space and water and nutrients from native plants that actually support wildlife. Here's another one, requirement. Try to put different layers of vegetation in your gardens. This is a chart that was put out by the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife, kind of talking about which birds like to nest at which parts of the tree canopy or shrub canopy on properties. It's really wonderful. Ideally, if you can get 5 of those layers on your property, you will qualify for a gold certificate through the program. But I'm not going to be here in Chico. I'm not going to hold people to this for the different levels of the program. The reason is that many people, especially those up in Cal Park or people who live north of town, have a really hard time growing trees. The soil, the lava flow under the soil, so it's very shallow. Those trees really cannot survive. So we do take that into consideration when we're looking for the certification. We're not going to be really rigid about that. If you can, though, plant some. Another thing is to use low volume irrigation. Especially if you're doing a lawn conversion, you'll probably have sprinklers. You take out the lawn, you're going to need to, change out those sprinklers for drip. It's not difficult to do. Here I have shown two different types. This is a netafim type of irrigation. What it does, it has emitters in the line every 6 to 12, 18 inches, depending on what you get. You put it in a grid, and it soaks the area. That is really good if you're doing a spreading plant, you want to do a ground cover, something that requires a little more water. If you're doing things with more drought tolerant, with shrubs, larger shrubs, and with spaces in between them, drip irrigation is a better option because it just gets the area around the roots of the plant wet. Part of the certification is to add some wildlife features, some things that, little special things. Water is a really wonderful thing to have in your yard. If you have a large yard and you can put in a pond, that's great, but very few of us do. A bird bath is fine, even a saucer with water, or a saucer with pebbles and some water for bees and butterflies is a great thing to have in your habitat garden. Birds, have bird houses. The program that AltaCal's been doing, somebody's been making bird houses out of new wood. Jared has told me that the birds don't seem to go for those for quite a few years until that wood gets old. So if you have old fence boards and stuff like that, great thing to make bird houses out of. We have information on how to do these things in our resource packet. There are links to people who know what they're doing. Another thing to do is make sure you leave a little bare space, bare spaces on your property for ground nesting insects. Our native bees, a lot of them are soil dwellers. They go into the ground during the winter and spend the winter there and emerge again in the spring. They, this is a picture right next to a path. The path has bark. I mean, the bed has bark, the path doesn't have bark, and that's where these bees decided to make their nests. But, it doesn't have to be a big deal. Just patches here and there so that they can find them. And have some water retention systems in place in your landscape. You can go full bore and put rooftop water catchment systems, or you can do something as simple as build a rain garden, which is simply a depression in the soil with maybe a couple plants that like water, with something that holds the rainwater for a while it's there, and then lets it drain in. The idea is to try to keep as much water on your property instead of having it drain off down the sewers and out into the rivers and ocean. It's very, very helpful for the trees and the shrubs if the water stays in the ground. You do not have to do anything as fancy as a dry stream bed. That seems to be a real popular thing to do. Not my particular favorite. That's just personal preference. What I did at my house before I landscaped is I took the rain gutters, the downspouts, we put in a pipe, a big drain, a big pit, filled it with gravel, and we have those things drain into that. You don't even know it's there. But it's a dry well. It keeps the water on the property instead of rushing down the driveway into the gutter. So those are the requirements for the program, but you don't have, that's stuff that you can do at any point. So catch my breath. And now I'm going to give you some steps on the process of building a habitat in your garden. Because this is one of the biggest questions that I have come across since I've been working with the Native Plant Society and with the program here, is that people go, I really want to do that, but I don't have the faintest idea where to start. So I built this list to kind of help people know the steps, the order of operations, if you will, about building landscape on your property. The first thing that you need to do, and if you've lived on your property for a while, you probably already know a lot of this stuff, but where is the sun and shade? What type of soil do you have? Does it drain fast? Do you have areas that don't drain at all and the water sits on it for a while? What is your function? What do you want to use that property for? Because this is an extension of your living space as well as all of your critter neighbors. What do you need it to do for you? And how do you need to move around it? How do you get from to one point? How do you get from the dump truck in your front yard to the area way out in the back? Make sure that you have access to the places that you need to have access to. It's called traffic. Look at the scope of your project. This is going to be all very personal stuff. Look at the scope of your project. How big is it? How much can you do in a period of time? How much do you want to take on? What is your budget and how much time do you have? These things are all really, really important. And they're just, things that you need to have to know in your mind before you get started on a project. And then my last one is make sure that the people that you live with are in agreement with you. It's really true. It's really, I've had personal experience with it in my own life. I've also had this come across when I sit down to talk to clients and they say, this is what we're going to do. We do this, this, and this. And the partner sits and going, I didn't know about that. That's not what I want to do with that area. So make sure that you're in agreement before you start, or else you'll do a bunch of work and then someone will come in and undo it for you and it'll break your heart. Okay, so after you have this all in your head, make a plan, okay? All right, and this is the thing about making a plan. It does not have to be fancy. It does not have to be to scale. It does not have to be any of that stuff, but the more you draw out, the easier it's going to be for you to communicate what you want to do with your housemates and with any kind of contractor or workers that you want to have come in and help you with if you do that. So you make a sketch of your property. Make a sketch of a corner. This is a corner of a property, okay? And determine where and then determine the things that you need for that area. Is it do you need edibles? Do you need screening from your neighbors? Do you need to make some shade? That's my big thing here in Chico. More shade I can have, the happier I am. Where do you need your walkways to be? That's that traffic issue, okay? Do you entertain outside? Do you barbecue? Do you need a place to eat? These are all things that are really, really important. So what I'm showing you here is a corner of my yard. And this is a drawing, it's a sketch, and I cleaned it up a little bit to present to somebody else. But what this shows you is that when I started to make my plan, because I'm a professional landscaper, I come in and I had grandiose ideas. I knew exactly what I wanted to see and all this stuff. Well, after looking at my budget and looking at the fact that I was doing it all by myself, I didn't have crews to do it, and the fact that I have a great big dog, all the plans and ideas I had went out the window, and the yard is designed around my dog because she needs the space to run. And all my things that I was going to do, I was like, how am I going to protect it from Grace, my dog? So I thought, I'm going to spend all my time out protecting my plants, and I don't want to do that. So I built my garden around my dog. And so what this shows is, how I kind of figured out where she was going to run and where we were going to play Frisbee. So my yard is based around her. You all have different things. Maybe you have kids that need a trampoline or something, That's the things to keep in mind when you're making your plan. Then, and while you're making your plan too, try to figure out how you're going to get rid of your lawn. This is actually a topic, and I don't have time to go into now. It's big, okay? But, if you turn off maybe you just want to turn off your water. Great. If you do that, make sure you water your existing trees or shrubs that you want to save. During the drought, people turned off their lawn water and killed their trees. Really an important thing to keep in mind. Okay. And then remove it and, any other plants that you don't think you want in your yard. And then here we have our, more of our, invasives, exotic invasives. There are some native plants that are invasive too. Those aren't on the list, okay? Then choose your plants, okay? Like I said, local natives are really good, are the best for habitat. You might not always find the things that you want, so you can consider looking at places outside of Chico for plant ideas. The farther you get away from our climate with the plants that you choose from, even though they're California natives, the harder it's going to be for you to keep them alive. Keep our climate in mind. So yeah, try to use as many native plants as you possibly can. And use a diverse types of plants. I'm not saying go out and get one of everything you see, but try to have different types of plants that bloom at different times of the year. It just kind of helps all the insects as they travel through your space. Choose plants, if you're looking at, up in the corner of your yard that has full sun and is really dry, make sure all the plants you choose for that are plants that are like dry and like sun. There are plants that like sun but also want a lot of water. You don't want to mix those two plants types together. You keep your riparian plants in wet places, you keep your dryland plants in another. Don't try to, put them next to each other. It makes one or the other one not going to make it. And so in choosing your plants, a lot of people don't have a big, strong background in native plants. So there's a really great website that I'm going to show you now. It's called Calscape. It's calscape.org. It is an interactive landscape plan website that is done through the California Native Plant Society. And it's really fun. This is in process of being updated and a new version coming out. Oh, that's my phone. You can, turn it off, please. The new version coming out, it will not look like this. It will not look like this when the new version comes out, but they keep postponing the date. So I'm going to just show you how it stands right now. So you go into Calscape, this is your opening page. You can enter a California address, or the zip code's easy too, and it will pop up the plants that are native to that specific area. It's fabulous. So now you have, so if you're for Chico, that's my zip code, 585 different types of native plants indigenous to this area. So, oh, okay, that's a lot of plants. I'm looking for a shrub. So pop in a shrub, and then they'll give you just a list of shrubs. From that, you go, oh, I want to look at the redbud. Okay, so this is the plant. This is the page for redbud. It shows you where it grows, and then it gives you. This is just a screenshot, so it doesn't show you. It goes down a lot further, a lot more information. It gives you all its cultural needs, how big it gets, and what nurseries you can get it at. So it's really, really helpful. And it also has wildlife supported. At this point, they don't have a lot on birds, but there's a lot on butterflies. And then they also have a feature of an advanced search. So if you just kind of, I don't know, you can go in and click off, what things that you're looking for, and it'll pop up a lot of plants for you that way as well. So a lot of fun. I had so much fun with this when I moved to Chico, because I'm gardening in a completely different environment than the one I had been in before. I had to relearn a lot of stuff. I spent most of my time on this website. So much so they asked me to be on the committee to help them reformat the new one. Okay. So after you've done that, you've picked your plants, you make a list. The first thing you do is you do your heavy construction. Anything that you've got to do that's going to be disturbing the land. You don't want to put any plants in until your big stuff is done. And you can see what it does. Anything that's like building, pathways, building fences, walkways and patios, boulders if you're bringing those in. If you're doing heavy, you need to put in irrigation or plumbing for fountains or anything like that, you do that at this point. You do all the tear up of your property, put in the big stuff, and then when you're done with that, you do your grading. At that point, that's when you can form your berms and swales, your rain gardens, or any of this kind of stuff with your water retention things in mind. But that's number one. And then, after you have that done, you've got your plan, you've got your construction done, then you go and buy your plants. If you're like most people, everybody wants to start at the nursery. Do not do that. You're just going to be wasting money. You're going to go, you're going to buy your plants. You're not going to need to do all this stuff. They're going to sit somewhere in your house. You're going to forget to water them. They're going to die. And then you're going to go and buy them again. So wait until you're ready to plant to go get your plants. Like I said, there are 4 places in town that are pretty good for getting native plants. If you're not familiar with them, it's Floral Native out on Meridian Road. Harvest and Habitats here in town, and that's Sherry. We certified her nursery. We had already certified her house. We certified her nursery. She has a lot of natives that Floral doesn't have. Little Red Hen, last time I was there, had a great selection. Not a big one, but a great selection. And Magnolia Nursery, depending on time of year, will have a fairly good selection. A lot of the plants do come from Floral Native. The thing about going and buying plants is that you're not going to, at these places, necessarily be able to get things in quantity if you want to do lots of them, or you might not be able to find the plants that you've chosen. Be prepared to maybe have to take a trip out of the area to find your plants. And the idea too is like, once you go to buy your plants, go with your list, the list that you have from your plan. Buy only those plants to start. You can always get more later, but start with the ones that you have on your list and only those. It's really hard not to go and buy a whole bunch of plants and not know what to do with them. And yes, if you go to Floral, if you go to Harvest and Habitats, they grow their own plants. They know what the plants have been treated with. If you go to big box stores or any retail nurseries, they buy their plants in. They do not know if the grower treated them with any kind of pesticides. Really important if you're doing a pollinator garden. Okay. So once you get those plants home, and here's another little goofy sketch. You know, it's just a sketch. These are the plants, and these are what I would do. These are the plants I'm going to use, and you're going to buy them, and then you're going to lay them out. This is where the idea of having a plan, it goes, well, why did I do that? I'm going to move everything around anyway. Well, that's okay. Move your plants around until they look like where you want them to be. To me, that's the funnest part of the whole project. Like, oh, that's where you lay them out. Nah, I don't like that. Ended up moving them around anyway. Okay, then you plant. Okay. The best times to plant, of course, are during the rainy season. I've learned the hard way, coming from an area where I could plant all year long, that I cannot do that here. I lost a lot of plants, and I've never lost plants before. By the end of March, stop adding native plants to your garden. It's too hard to keep them irrigated. And with the hot weather, the combination of water and heat will really do a bad number on the roots of the plants. So try to have your planting done by March if you can. If that it just becomes too difficult. When you do go to plant, you do not need natives, but some of the other with natives, you do not need to add fertilizers, soil amendments, or to till the soil. Okay. I will make one adjustment to that, though. If you are removing a lawn that has been in place for decades and has been treated with chemical fertilizers and herbicides to keep weeds out and stuff like that, I say go ahead, and put down a nice layer of rich compost and some mycelium powder on that to help rebuild that soil because it is deeply depleted. It will not hurt the natives, but you don't need it otherwise. Okay. So when you go to plant your plant, start planting your biggest plants first, the ones in the biggest containers, because they're going to make the biggest holes. So start by planting those first, and dig your holes only as deep as the root ball, especially if you live in a place that has clay soil. You do not want to form a nice little area under that root ball that collects water and drowns the roots of the plant. And it's always better, especially if you're using a lot of mulch, to plant higher than lower than the soil level. Okay. Then after the planting's done, then you install the drip from the main lines that you had put in during your construction phase. Okay. You do have to water native plants for the first couple of years. because the root ball, until that root ball, the roots are out of the container soil and into the soil around them, that soil that from the cans is going to be drained much faster and dry out much faster, so you have to keep it watered until those plants are really have their roots established in the surrounding soil. Add a mulch layer after that. After you have all that stuff done, then you add your mulch. Nice thick layer, helps retain water, helps keep the weed down. I think ground barks are the best for most plants. Don't use eucalyptus or walnut because they have allelopathic properties that keep not only weeds from growing, but your plants as well. And do not use willow or bamboo if you can, because if that stuff is not completely dry and you keep it wet, it will reroot and you'll have willows and bamboo in your garden instead. Gravel works for desert plants and seashore plants. Use it sparingly here in Chico if you live in town because of the urban heat problem due to climate change. Rock and gravel reflect heat back, store it during the night, and will make your property hotter. So I recommend, it's a fairly popular thing to do in Chico because it doesn't take any water, but just think of the consequences of the heat that you're creating when you do that. Do not use landscape fabric, please, or plastic, horrible for the soil. And landscape fabric does not keep weeds from growing. It makes weeds grow on top of it instead of underneath it. Cardboard sheets under mulch is great, and you can do that. That works just fine, and that's part of the sheet mulching regimen that you can do to kill your lawn, which is on the website. Leave some bare soil for the bees, and leave your leaves when they fall in the fall. Really important for habitat, especially for insects. For example, the tiger swallowtail butterfly. Its host plant is sycamore. One of it is sycamore. What they'll do is they'll stay on the sycamore plant. They'll, the caterpillars eat, and lay the eggs. The caterpillars will eat the leaves, and then they'll form the chrysalises on the leaves. When those leaves fall, they drop to the ground. They stay underground. They stay under those leaves all winter, and then they metamorphose and come out in the spring. If you remove those leaves, you've just taken away all your swallowtail butterflies. The leaves feed the soil. They are nesting places for not only swallowtail butterflies, but a lot of other insects and other creatures as well. They can get a little high if they start to cover your plants. Brush them aside. Watch, if you do blow sidewalks and things, they can get pretty high along the edges. Just take part of them and move them to places where you don't have as much leaves. Raise a great mulch. It doesn't last all year, but you don't have to spend a lot of money constantly replenishing your bark. So here's that same little side garden again with the mulch down and an area for wildflower seeds. And then after that's all done, then you add your features. You add your bird baths and your bee hotels, your bird houses and all that stuff. And like I said before, avoid outdoor lighting, especially uplighting, which is so gorgeous in landscapes to uplight a beautiful specimen tree or shrub. It looks so nice. Really bad for habitat. For insects, it really upsets insect cycles and a lot of the birds, as you know more about than I do. And then get certified. Big field. This is really important. These are our websites where you can find information about the program. I have a little, I hope it's out there. It hasn't printed on there for you if you want. The Waterwise Chico is kind of like it helps us with having the double place to put our information, but it's also where we advertise and sell tickets for the garden tour, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Okay. Then enjoy what you've created, and it really is a lot of fun. Even my husband, who spent his whole life working in an office, loves being able to go out now, and he's become a bee person photographs bees, and he's counting birds, and he's got his Merlin app and stuff. I never thought I'd see that. It's really cool. Other resources, here's some books that I highly recommend. Nature's Best Hope, if you're not familiar with Doug Ptolemy. He is an eloquent speaker. He's a professor of entomology at the University of Delaware. Hugely influential book. Wonderful, wonderful. If you haven't read it, please do. Or you can see his talk on YouTube. You can get a real good taste for it right away. The California Native Wildlife Habitat Garden book by Nancy Bauer, great for beginners. Really nice. And then if you want some specific things to know about about native plants, then you can get on Calscape. The other little book is California Native Plants for the Garden. And then the garden tour. Okay. Have any of you been on our garden tour? Yeah, it's really a lot of fun. It's wonderful. It's a way to get around town and see what people are doing to create habitat here in town. Small lots, large lots. This year, I'm really excited. I've got 2 gardens in paradise, post-fire gardens. It's going to be a little drive, but one of them in particular, I was telling Jennifer before the show, most of the garden is regrowth from the fire. She's lost all her trees, but the toy on her standing 15 feet tall. This is just amazing. In 5 years, it was enough to make her convert over completely to growing native plants after she saw how resilient they are. Really amazing. So something to look forward to. With the garden tour, we're still taking gardens. If any of you have gardens or know somebody who might like to be on the tour, please let us know. We also are in desperate need of volunteer help. It's always probably our biggest challenge doing this tour. I have a sign-up sheet over there. The volunteer work is pretty minor. It can be anywhere from helping us with publicity, putting posters around town, or helping garden hosts at their garden, help direct traffic and that sort of thing. Everybody who does do the work has a really, really good time. It's a fun day. So make note of the date. Again, here's our websites. If you ever have questions or problems with, things that you want to get some help with in creating your garden, please email us. And I check it often, and we do respond pretty fast. We do have a little social media page on Instagram. But there's places that you can contact us. Yes, and just remember, that every yard does matter. And if you say, well, my place is so small, what difference is my little yard going to do? It does a lot, especially when you do it with other people doing the same things around you. It's a cumulative effect. It makes a big difference. Okay, I think I got through it all. Yes.
On your keystone plants, I was surprised that I didn't see the toy.
Well, the list is very, very long. I took the top 10 or 12. Okay. Yeah. No, they're a lot. No, yeah. The more species it hosts, the more important it is for that particular ecosystem. Okay. So, yes.
You mentioned on the website that you like to play around on. You can put your address or your zip code. Have you fooled around with doing the zip code and then compared it with your address and see if there's any changes? Because I know my zip code and kind of the area that it encompasses, and within my zip code, I would say there's some variations in microhabitat.
Yeah.
So, have you ever noticed like a little more refined information if you give your address as opposed to your zip code?
No, I haven't. I haven't looked at it that I haven't compared them side by side like that. No. Doing your specific site, I don't know how. I would say that if you go a little broader from your particular site, your choices might be a little bit bigger. You might have more options. You know, and even if, for example, here in Chico, you know, downtown Chico, you're not going to necessarily find native, manzanita, for example. They like it just a little bit higher up in rockier soil. Doesn't mean you can't try that. You know, the climate's still pretty much the same. It's worth. I just love to experiment. You know, don't limit yourself completely to that. You know, feel free to you know, you have latitude. It's your garden. You know, yeah.
Over the last couple of years, I've put in a native garden, mostly native homes. And it's worked very, very well. The birds love it, of course. The same period, I had a bunch of new neighbors move in. And so I live in a very small lot with a high fence around my backyard, a high wooden fence. I have 6 or 8 very large cats that regularly come into my yard and kill the birds. I've seen them reach into bird nests and kill them. 2 days ago, there was one up in the tree. I had dead birds in the part of the back patio. I don't know what to do about this. I feel like I'm attracting birds to my house that are going to be killed by these cats. I'm wondering if there are any solutions.
Well, there's solutions for you. There's solutions for your neighbors, but you know, convincing them to keep their cats indoors or to make a catio or, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah. This is the problem of living in an urban area. You cannot control what your neighbors do, unfortunately. You know, the cats are a problem. Another problem for people is that they're creating this organic, natural habitat garden, and right across the fence they have a pesticide service that comes and sprays every week. It's like, you know, what can you, it's like, all I can say is that you just do your best. Know that you're doing the right thing, and that's the best answer I have. If you're in good terms with your neighbor, maybe you can convince them. I've never had that luck. So, yeah.
Now, there might be some questions on the
Okay.
chat.
Okay. Go ahead.
Ryan? Yeah.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes.
So, we're looking at putting in an area not very large in a condominium complex that I live in. And it's valley soil. It's Chico loam. It's beautiful. And so often you read about the soil requirements for different native plants. And I'm wondering if our soil's too rich. And do most plants that, you know, like magnolia and floral native, these native plants have been grown for urban areas, but do they tolerate rich loam?
Well, a couple things to say about that. First is, if you stay with local natives, local to your area, you're going to have plants that will like that soil. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing is that I haven't seen a huge amount of problem with a lot of natives in that really rich soil. As long as you stay away from things that are, well, if you really like desert plants, for example, who don't like that at all.
Really poor soil.
And I have a couple of gardens, certified gardens, where people live in that area, you know, that fine loam soil, and they want a desert chaparral garden, and they're bringing in rock, and they're doing all this stuff. It's like, from my perspective, you know, you're doing that out of love because you love those plants. I really highly suggest using plants that are appropriate for the site, not always what you like. You know, which is hard for gardeners, you know, but you'll have so much more success that way. And I'm really surprised by your question, because I really thought you were going to ask me about HOAs, CCNRs, and getting around them. So I was a little bit
Well,
surprised.
I just joined the landscape committee and make the decision You know, and we have actually done quite a big project where we took all the grass out of a
Wonderful.
large corner of the area. One last question. This project, it's a small area, but it's just a visual. It's nobody's backyard.
Oh, okay.
Animals in it. And I think we lost the window of opportunity when it's hot to hardboard off to kill the soil. And so with all the rain, it's just overgrown with lawn. I mean, some of it doesn't have lawn because years ago a tree was taken out, but if we're gonna plant before the end of March, we've gotta get rid of all the grass, and I don't know if just excavating is the best route at this point, or.
Yes, there's,
And it's a lot of, I mean,
is it Bermuda grass?
there's Bermuda grass,
Okay.
but a lot of it's lawn grass
Okay.
that has had fertilizer in it since the 70s.
I'll talk to you about it after the program. This might be, important to somebody else, but I'm afraid that I might be going
It's a
a
big
little long here.
topic.
Yes, it's a huge topic. You notice I didn't touch it.
Yeah, I know, we just went right over it. That was what I came here to talk about.
Oh, okay. Maybe I should just do a program just on how to get rid of your lawn. Okay. Anything?
So, yeah, we're looking to see if there's any kind of questions from other folks on Zoom. Someone said great presentation.
Oh, that's sweet.
Someone wants to know how they can access the recording of this. We'll get it downloaded and it'll be on our website, the AltaCal website. On YouTube. Any other questions? I don't see anything else. We have a few there. It was just a fabulous presentation. Really, really good. Let's get out there and start somewhere.
Get
So,
certified.
yeah, get certified.
Thank
So
you.
thank you, everybody. We'll see you next month. Our president of AltaCal went and Ecuador. Anyway, he'll talk about his trip where he actually saw over 400 different species of birds. So, good night.